So Michael, I always try to ask my guests to talk a little bit about their paths and their trajectories because they're so different and they're so interesting. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your path, maybe from the time we met at Columbia to today?
Thanks, Michael. It's so fun to be here talking to you in this context. I'm so excited that we're doing this. Yeah, I look back at our time together at CCNMTL, the Center for New Media Teaching and Learning, that we both had the privilege of working at as a real seminal time in my own learning and development. I always thought that the most intriguing part of working at the center was not only that we were kind of a learning organization for the university, but also it was a think tank and a lab for ourselves, that we were surrounded by people from diverse backgrounds who brought different kinds of expertise, and but also were mentored by really smart people. The leadership of the center, Frank Moretti and Maurice Matisse and others, but also all the faculty we got to work with. It was just a special time. Like, I think the promise of all the technology that was emerging, what you could do with the internet that was productive for higher ed, was really inspiring for a lot of people. And we still didn't really know much about how it could be effective. We did a lot of visionary work together, pushing the boundaries of what you could do on computers with the network behind them. And things that presaged new and convenient things that we just use and take for granted every day today. I mean, if you think about the video case analysis system we built before YouTube, or multimedia study environments before Wikipedia, lots of things that just like were like just on the cutting edge, and we all kind of got to participate in that. And I think that set me off on a career of a couple things. Just human-centered design, that everything we made was for an audience with specific goals that we collaboratively developed with the faculty clients. It was all tested with a lot of rigor internally. We had these legendary Thursday morning all staffs, right, where people took turns sharing their work in progress, and then getting a lot of feedback, sometimes hard feedback. And Frank himself was sort of legendary for, at the conclusion of an hour-long meeting like that, saying, "Well, so what?"
Right.
And kind of demanding that you justify why we should do this, what kind of difference it was making for people, which I thought was kind of both really bracing and unfortunate to be on the receiving end of, but also like kind of the right question to be asking always.
Right.
So what one thing about that was sort of the human-centered nature, but also I think the sort of continuous, rigorous pursuit of creative things. Like we made stuff. It was new things. It was trying things. I think that there's to have that opportunity to learn in that kind of space as a professional is really cool. And then both you and I were also at Teachers College. I know you taught there for a long time. Do you still teach Java? Does
No,
anybody?
no.
No. Does that, like those days are over, I guess, for
Yes,
people
they
to.
moved it to more JavaScript, HTML, CSS
Yeah.
type. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're all going to be just replaced by AI eventually anyway, right? Um, but and then so I was a grad student at Teachers College at that time. And so really it was like going to having two parallel graduate programs. When I finally did get a diploma though from TC, and then I also then left CCNMTL not too long after. I wanted to just take what I had learned out I mean, basically, I wanted to go back to the New York City public school system, which is where I came from. I applied to TC in the first place because we were doing these new sort of imagining possibilities for the internet in K-12 schools. We were doing some creative work at the previous job I had, but honestly didn't feel like I could understand or define and measure what kids were learning. Like, what was the transformational impact that we could make with technology? Were we doing it? Did it matter? So those questions kind of motivated me to do the whole CCNMTL and TC thing. So after graduating, I went to work for the New York City Department of Ed, and I ran digital programs for several years, mostly for high schools and high school students, some middle school stuff, but mostly like basically the 10 years later, the same kind of questions that I had when I first started that work. And so we were doing like sort of competency-based learning platforms and systems for kids in high school who were maybe like a little off track for graduation and needed to have some sort of like more relevant and motivating pathways that would make them want to do some work in school and might be more meaningful and connected to their experience. We also started doing computer science course development and teacher development around those days, and which those pilots eventually led to much bigger initiatives where computer science became much more widely interest grew a lot and became much more widely deployed in public schools. And I think that throughout all that, it was the same kind of like, so what question that kind of kept me going. It's like, we're doing this because it matters for kids, that there were a lot of opportunities to use technology in ways that were not just an add-on or an efficiency, but actually transforming what kids were able to do. And that idea that you could center kids' experience in design in that way, and that there was room to do that in like a massively scaled public education system was like just the best. Like I had an awesome team that worked on all the projects that I mentioned and some others. And by the time I left, we had like all this really cool momentum. I went on I kept going in computer science. I ran a nonprofit focused on that first in New York City, and then we went national. It was called CS for All. It's still going. We still need computer science for all, although what that means, I think, is changing a lot, which is really interesting. As AI comes and new tools support different ideas of like you were saying, like we don't need to necessarily teach Java to students, maybe not right away or not for all students, but there are other kinds of tools and languages and approaches that kids need to learn if they're just going to be basically conversant or understand how to program a computer. But those skills still matter. It's just they have to continue to evolve. And then to conclude this long-winded story, I jumped to Sesame in 2019 to lead the Joan Gans Cooney Center, which is a research and innovation lab inside Sesame focused on field building. Like we basically bring Sesame-inspired design for kids, how to center kids' experience and benefit in the design of technology and media that are made for them. So we try to help other people who are not Sesame think like we do and make better products for kids.